Hey everyone, and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking an incredibly fascinating mystery about human behavior. It's something that happens right in front of us literally every single day, but we almost never notice it. We're talking about laughter. But, not just any laughter. We're going to explore the profound and honestly kind of hidden psychology behind why we smile through suffering. So let's just dive right into this because I promise you, by the end of this explainer, you are never going to hear a laugh the exact same way again. All right, to start, I want you to take a quick second and picture someone specific. Think about the class clown from your school days. Or maybe, that joke-cracking coworker who has a witty comeback for literally every crisis. Or even that friend who just always makes everyone in the room burst into tears of joy. Now, what if the absolute funniest person you know is actually the one hurting the most? It's a pretty striking paradox, right? Why does happiness sometimes wear the mask of laughter, while genuine, deep pain manages to stay completely invisible right underneath it? So, culturally, our expectation is super straightforward. Laughter means joy, period. End of story. But the reality that's been uncovered by neuroscience, psychology, and history, well, it tells a far stranger, much more complex story. Sometimes laughter isn't the opposite of pain at all. Sometimes it's actually the disguise. You see, our brains are constantly doing this behind-the-scenes work to manage our emotions, and laughter happens to be one of its most deceptive tools. To really get this, we have to look at the mystery of when laughter unexpectedly strikes. Imagine you've just had one of the absolute worst, most overwhelming days of your entire life, and then, out of nowhere, someone makes a joke and you just burst out laughing. Obviously, your life didn't suddenly get better, but your mind got to escape for a brief second. Think about it. If laughter only evolved to express happiness, why on earth does it show up in hospitals, at funerals, or even right in the middle of disasters? Well, psychology tells us this happens because there is something your brain fears even more than sadness itself, and that's the complete loss of control. And this brilliantly illustrates what psychologists call relief theory. I want you to think of your mind as a pressure cooker. Every disappointment, every fear, every moment of profound embarrassment you experience just adds more and more pressure inside that cooker. Eventually, something has to release it before the whole thing explodes, right? Well, laughter acts as that emergency exit. It's a release valve for nervous energy and emotional tension. Have you ever nervously laughed when you saw someone trip and fall? You're not laughing because it's genuinely funny. You're laughing because your brain suddenly has all this tension and literally doesn't know how else to discharge it safely. The crazy thing is, the scientific journey to understand this mechanism has actually taken over a century. Let's trace it back real quick. In 1860, philosopher Herbert Spencer was the first to propose this relief theory. Then in 1905, Sigmund Freud expanded on it, arguing that jokes allow forbidden emotions like fear and anxiety to escape safely from our unconscious. Fast forward a bit to 1973, and Paul Ekman begins his groundbreaking work on how we use facial expressions as social masks. And then, in 2011, Robin Dunbar takes the whole thing to a biological level by studying endorphins. Step by step, scientists have proven that laughter is way more than just the reaction to a good joke. Actually, let's zoom in on that 2011 Oxford research by Robin Dunbar, because this is where things get incredibly literal. When you laugh, your brain triggers the release of endorphins, which are your body's natural painkillers, along with dopamine, which is the chemical tied to reward and motivation. But here is the massive twist. Dunbar's experiments showed that people who laughed together could tolerate significantly more physical pain afterward. It wasn't just that they felt happier, their brains biologically used laughter as medicine to genuinely reduce physical pain. It's an actual survival mechanism hardwired right into our biology. So let's bring this back to the real world, and specifically to the people who use this exact mechanism professionally. Why do comedians joke about pain? I mean, so many comedians take heartbreak, rejection, failure, and their own personal struggles and turn them into their very best material. Well, psychology suggests this isn't just to entertain us in the audience, it's a profound coping strategy for the performer. By laughing at painful experiences, they can look at incredibly difficult emotions head-on while actively reducing their emotional intensity. It basically makes those feelings much easier to process. Take comedians like Zakir Khan and Anubhav Basi, for example. These guys are absolute masters at turning personal struggles into incredibly relatable stories. Like, Basi humorously describes the totally stressful, sleepless nights of competitive exam preparation. He takes a deeply stressful, anxiety-inducing experience and turns it into something his audiences absolutely roar with laughter at, simply because they relate to it so deeply.
The pain of those setbacks was very, very real, but utilizing humor makes it easier for him to process, and it makes it easier for the audience to share in that collective relief. Now, the fancy scientific term for this process is cognitive reappraisal. It sounds complex, but it's really just a mature defense mechanism. It basically means changing how we interpret difficult experiences. Instead of your brain looking at pain as purely just suffering, humor allows the brain to reframe it into something meaningful, relatable, and sometimes even empowering. You aren't denying reality at all. You are actively rewiring how your brain perceives that reality. And human beings have actually relied on this exact mechanism during the absolute darkest chapters of our history. During World War II, prisoners, soldiers, and civilians frequently exchanged jokes in the most unimaginable, horrific circumstances. And they didn't do this because life was amusing, no way. They did it because humor served as a psychological shield. It was a vital, totally necessary tool to preserve hope when literally everything else was falling apart around them. Psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, who himself survived the Nazi concentration camps, made this incredibly profound observation. He wrote that even brief laughter gave people psychological distance from their pain. When everything else, your freedom, your dignity, your safety, was entirely stripped away, people still fiercely protected their ability to laugh. It was this tiny, rebellious reminder that their suffering hadn't completely taken away their humanity. But we do have to address the darker side of this incredible mechanism, because if laughter is a mask, sometimes it becomes a little too convincing. Psychologists often talk about a pattern known as smiling depression. Now, while it's not an official psychiatric diagnosis, it perfectly describes people who appear outwardly cheerful. They're always smiling, always joking, always making sure everyone else is okay, while they are silently experiencing significant depressive symptoms. Their laughter becomes camouflage, their jokes become armor, and because society just blindly assumes laughter means joy, no one even notices they are struggling. This actually ties right back to Paul Ekman's 1973 research on facial expressions. We learn to become what he calls social actors. We smile because it's polite, or because we don't want to appear weak, or maybe because we've learned that showing sadness makes other people uncomfortable. Your brain essentially becomes an actor just to survive socially. But acting has a massive cost. Research consistently shows that chronic emotional suppression, basically constantly forcing a laugh to hide pain, is associated with higher stress, poorer well-being, and reduced relationship satisfaction. Your brain can absolutely hide the pain from others, but it certainly cannot erase it. So, how do we reconcile all of this? Well, we tend to think of emotions as contradictions, right? Like you are either happy or you are sad. But the human brain isn't designed to feel just one emotion at a time. It constantly blends them. Joy and grief, hope and fear. They aren't opposites. They're roommates. They live together. And that is exactly why you can cry while laughing or smile while you're completely falling apart inside. Your emotions are just layers, constantly interacting with one another. Which brings us to our absolute biggest takeaway. The next time you catch yourself joking around after receiving some terrible news, please don't feel guilty. Your brain isn't broken. It's likely doing exactly what evolution designed it to do, creating just enough emotional distance so that you can keep moving forward. Humor doesn't deny reality. It makes reality bearable. It's a reminder that your pain hasn't completely removed you from the world. Every laugh you hear tells a story. Some are celebrating pure, unadulterated joy. Some are releasing nervous fear. And some are quietly asking for help. The strange, kind of beautiful thing about being human is that you rarely know which one you're hearing. So I want to leave you with this thought. If laughter can hide pain so perfectly, how many invisible battles have you already smiled past without ever even noticing? Thank you so much for exploring this with me on The Explainer. Keep learning and keep looking just a little bit closer at the world around you.